Добре дошли на участниците в днешната среща, чиято основна цел е да ви запознае с регулаторни изисквания по отношение на вината и решението Bottle Books, което ще бъде представено днес. Като ние като организация винаги се стремим да информираме общността за новите тенденции в отделните сектори, но сега ще дам думата на господин Симеонов да открие официално срещата. Господин Симеонов, имате думата. Господин Симеонов, председател на Българско търговска промишлена палата и председател на управителния съвет на GS1 България. Господин Симеонов, имате думата.
Второто е по-важно. Благодаря на всички участници за това, че се възползваха от днешното представяне. За мое удовлетворение, GS1 успя, въпреки трудностите, да предостави на възможности за съобразяване с изискванията на нормативните актове и в България, и в Европейския съюз. Правим го вече 30 и отгоре години. Знаете, регламента е от отдавна, но, както винаги се случва, много малко са тези, които изпреварващо се съобразяват с него, без това да е задължително. Няма да ви занимавам с това колко усилия ни отне да намерим най-доброто решение за вас, но мисля, че ще удовлетворим всички. Днес ще направим представяне от извора ще пием вода. Нашия партньор за това упражнение е Bottle Books, който по наша информация обслужва вече производителите на такива напитки в някои европейски страни. Те, разбира се, ще се представят по-добре. Това, което договорихме с тях, е добри отстъпки за българските фирми. Радвам се, че го представяме преди началния срок на действие на директивата, на регламента, извинявам се, и това, че то вече е отворено за вашето ползване. Днешното очаквахме малко повече участници, защото сме ангажирали всички известни нам обединения на професионалистите в винопроизводството и в това число и държавните институции. Имам предвид Министерство на земеделието и горите. Този модел, който ви представяме, вече ви казах, че се използва и работи успешно. Тоест, българските фирми ще имат възможността с един работещ модел, защото имаше и такива предложения към нас, които бяха в процес на разработка. Радвам се, че можем с експертното представяне да ви дадеме средство за изпълнение на един нормативен акт в Европейския съюз. Нека българските производители да бъдат сред първите, които го прилагат. Не сте под напрежение, защото по предварителна информация, вярно, че срока за въвеждането на това изискване е 8 декември, ако не греша, но това важи за напитките, които ще бъдат бутилирани след този срок, т.е. тази годишната реколта, по всяка вероятност, не че съм експерт в тая област, но всички българи се пишат за експерти в винарския сектор. Все пак ще има време за реакция. Ще видите в самото представяне, че има и стимули за по-ранно записване и въвеждане на информацията, за да може да се ползват тия улеснения и намаления, които договорихме с нашите партньори от Books. Няма нужда от повече общи представяния. На линия виждам експерта от Books, който ще направи представянето. Използвайте възможността. Виждате, че има превод симултантен в днешната среща. Използвайте възможността въпроси, които ви вълнуват, да бъдат поставени, изяснени още сега. За времето след това, за ваши познати, партньори, колеги от бизнеса, може да ги информирате, че екипа на на GS1, естествено на Българска търговско-промишлена палата, защото връзката вътрешната е топла и постоянна, ще бъде на разположение за съдействие. Нашите експерти минаха вече това обучение. По тяхни думи не е толкова сложно упражнението. Пожелавам на всички успешно справяне с поредното предизвикателство, което Европейската администрация ни поставя, но все пак в фокуса в една пазарна икономика е крайният потребител. Знаете по своя собствен опит колко капризни са европейските потребители, пък и не само те. Затова нека им дадем достатъчно информация на разположение, за да могат да вземат своето решение, кой продукт да употребяват. Желая на всички успешно усвояване на днешната информация, успешно въвеждане на данните за продуктите, които ще означите с QR-код и успех, разбира се, в пласирането на продукцията. Вярно е, че тая година само за протокол да отбележим, че сме наясно, че е малко по-сложно положението с суровината. Не беше добра година за гроздето, но няма изба, която да разчита само на тази годишната реколта. Сигурно ще има бутилиране и на предишни реколти. Затова съобразете се с разпоредбата и успешно пласирайте своята качествена продукция. В България сме горди с това, че наистина в последните години имаме все по-качествена и добре приета продукция. Успех на днешната среща!
Благодаря, господин Симеонов, за тези въвеждащи думи. Доколкото като организация се стремим към прилагането на стандарти и използването на уникален глобален език, както каза и господин Симеонов, през изминалите месеци направихме разговори с различни разработчици на решения в посока удовлетворяването на изискванията за предоставяне на информация към крайните потребители относно хранителните стойности и състава на вината. И с оглед на това, че в рамките на самата организация GS1 се работи върху стандарти, свързани с модела на данните, както и с еднозначната идентификация на продуктите. В предварителните преговори и разговори, които направихме, намерихме така най-много общи допирни точки с решението, което се предлага от Books, И сега искам да дам думата на господин Йонатан Хартлерот да представи изискванията по регламента и самото решение, като предварително искам да кажа, че с бутон Interpretation, който е изразен с глобус в долния край на прозореца, може да изберете езика, на който искате да слушате представенето, а след представенето ще имате възможност и за въпроси. Господин Хартле Рот, имате думата.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Simeonov, Ms. Pratanova, thank you very much for that kind introduction. We at Bottle Books are delighted to partner with GS1 Bulgaria to provide a solution to the new regulations from the EU. And I look forward to presenting the regulation today and hopefully answering many of your questions in the process about how to comply with the regulation. Let me share my screen so that I can take you through the presentation. Is everybody able to see my screen? I'll just confirm before I move forward.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Thank you. So, during this presentation, we will briefly discuss what Bottle Books is, so you know us as a company. We will then talk about the new regulation in detail, especially about when you need to begin. We will show you then a short demo of what it is like to create an e-label. What does it mean to create an e-label? And then we'll talk about a few final details about printing the label and also what you have to do for your online shop. First of all, what is Bottle Books? We are a software company. We make software specifically for the wine and beverage industry. We have been doing this since 2013. We allow businesses to centralize all of their information about wine, marketing information, production information, logistic information into a single system, and then supply that with customers around the world, such as ProWine, Wine Searcher, and several retailers. You can see a selection of our customers on the right-hand side. We work across the industry, not just with producers, but with importers, with retailers, with wine associations, and partners like GS1 to help streamline the data and to help you as businesses fill out fewer forms. Why does a winery use Bottle Books besides e-labels? Many wineries that we speak with, when they're not using Bottle Books, they have a combination of Excel sheets and information spread in different systems. In Bottle Books, they're able to combine all that information into a single system. They can share this information across their winery so that everybody involved in the business has access to the product information. And then they can export and share this information with all their partners through PDF, Excel, links, so that it saves you time in communicating about your products. E-labels has become a very important topic, and we have been working on this for more than 2 years. So let's talk about the new legal requirements. Bottle Books is in close coordination with legal experts as well as the negotiators at the European Union. We have also developed the system over the past 2 years with leading producers from around the world who have top compliance teams to ensure that our product meets the legal requirements and fits your workflow. We must caution, however, this is not a legal advice. We provide what we believe to be a conservative interpretation but there are ongoing clarifications, and this is the current interpretation of the current legislation. What are these new regulations? In short, it says that wines must now have the same labels as other foods. That includes an ingredients list, it includes a nutritional information table, and energy values. What is special about wine, however, is that it is the first product that is allowed to use e-labels to fulfill this requirement. Wine is obviously a very unique product. It is distributed not just in your home country, but around Europe and around the world in many different languages. And it makes it very difficult, very complicated to do this when you're only printing labels. So e-labels was absolutely essential for the wine industry to be able to provide nutritional information. When do the regulations apply? Clarification was made at the end of September, finally, on what December the 8th actually means. December the 8th, all wines must be produced by December the 8th if you do not want to comply. Or other words, wines produced after December the 8th must comply with the new regulations. What does this mean for you as a winery specifically? This means that, very simply, all of your 2024 vintage and beyond must comply. Some wines from the 2023 vintage may also need to have nutritional information. And produced means, very simply, the wine must be at its final alcohol, its final acidity, and its final pressure before December the 8th. It does not need to be bottled. It does not need to be labeled. It just needs to be produced. And the 2023 vintage wines that are impacted are going to be sparkling wines that are undergoing the second fermentation, as well as any late harvest wines, ice wines, that are still fermenting when December the 8th passes. But as Mr. Simeonov indicated, the 2024 vintage is the first vintage where all of your wines will need to comply. We're frequently asked the question, what about my 2022 vintage? I still have 2022 vintage wines in my cellar, and I am still selling them now, and I will still be selling them in 2024. You do not need to do anything to your 2022 wines and older vintages, your 23s. If they're already bottled and labeled, you can continue selling them without any legal considerations. Now, I said legal. You may have some of your distribution partners that have other requests and requirements to you in connection with the new legislation. So we can separate these two. One is legal and one is business. Some of those retailers and distributors are asking for information on the 2023 vintage and sometimes previous vintages. However, this is just getting information. It is not about changing or redoing the labels on your bottle. They are just looking for nutritional information so that their presentation about all of their wines can be consistent, regardless of vintage. Let's focus now specifically on this new opportunity to meet requirements using e-labels. What is required for an e-label? It must be clear for the consumer when they scan the wine that the information is for that wine. The information must be translated into every country where you are actively marketing and selling the wine. Why is this important? It means that when you have visitors or tourists who are coming to your winery, tasting wines, ordering and having those wines shipped internationally, it means that you do not have to translate the information into all of those languages if you don't want to. If, however, you have a distribution partner, for example, in Austria, then it means you do need to translate your information into German. It's important to note that some countries require multiple languages. Belgium is perhaps the most extreme. They require it in 4 languages: English, French, Dutch, and German. We have a recommendation about how many QR codes and how many e-labels you need. We recommend that you have 1 e-label per vintage, and 1 QR code for each format. We are working with GS1 to support the GS1 Digital Link standard, as Mr. Simeonov indicated in his presentation. And this, using a different QR code on each of your vintages and each of your formats, allow you to make this very seamless, very easy transition from one-dimensional barcodes to two-dimensional barcodes. And this standard that the GS1 has established is poised to save wineries a lot of time filling out forms, because with this two-dimensional barcode, you will be able to communicate not just the nutritional information, but when the software when you have software that recognizes the GS1 Digital Link QR codes, they can download all the rest of the information they need, meaning you can scan a bottle. Online shop could scan your bottle with their webcam and download your bottle image, your analytics, all of your marketing information for their online shop without you filling out any additional form. And that's why, despite this new regulation forcing us in the industry to move to nutritional information, it actually means that in a very short period of time, we believe, you will have a lot fewer forms to fill out as wineries. So it's a bit of an upfront investment in time to get organized, but it will pay off for you very, very soon. Now, with the e-labels, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. Most of the providers are taking care of this for you. The first thing is that e-labels are not allowed to track people. So this means that Google Analytics cannot be used, and you also have to be careful about other tools you use to build the site, such as using free software such as Google Fonts. This is why most wineries are using external providers, because all of your websites have Google Analytics. They do track the users. You need this information to run your business. And to modify your website is quite expensive, and that's why wineries work with third-party vendors. It's also not allowed to have marketing or e-commerce. This regulation by the EU is coming as part of their anti-cancer campaign. And so that's why we're not allowed to have more promotional or marketing messages on there. At the moment, there is a mixed opinion on what does marketing mean. In some countries, the regulatory agencies believe that this means you cannot even link to your own website. This is something that we're working with our partners to change. So the experts that are doing the negotiations at the EU, but for the moment, this is one of the gray areas that have yet to be clarified by the EU that we're following very closely. And as I mentioned, these are what is making it complicated to use your own website. The e-labels are really not a website, or not. You don't think about e-labels as a website. You think of the e-labels as a normal label. It just happens to be digital. And you want to be able to create an e-label, put the QR code on the bottle, and just forget about it, just as you do the labels that you've printed on your bottles last year. They're on the bottles. They provide the information they need to, and you don't have to think about them when you upgrade your website in the future or develop a new website. Your e-labels will continue to function. So now let's go and see what it's like to create an e-label. For the demo, we're of course using our software. This is what it looks like when you log into e-labels. I'm doing this presentation in English. It's a bit easier for me. I'm sorry, I don't speak Bulgarian, and we don't have anybody on our team yet who speaks Bulgarian. We are translating all of the software into Bulgarian so that you will be able to use the software in a very comfortable manner. We're translating documentation into Bulgarian. And if you want to write us in Bulgarian, we're happy to take your emails and answer you in Bulgarian using translation tools. So we want to make this comfortable for you and provide you support in the most convenient way. So let's create an e-label. We will go up here and create e-label, and we will create an e-label for a rosé wine. They always have nice bottles. And already after you do that, you have a QR code that you can put on your bottle. Now, when we speak with wineries, this is often you need to put the QR code on your labels before you know what the characteristics of your wine are. And that's why the first thing you do is create the QR code. Also important is that once the QR code has been downloaded, you want to make sure that goes on the right bottle. And so every QR code at BottleBooks is live the moment that you create it. You can scan it, you can see it's for the rosé or whatever the wine is. It is always active. We never delete a QR code, the links never break. And this helps you avoid any accidents in the production process. We're going to continue and create the e-label now. We're going to choose wine. There are slightly different requirements for other product types. So we'll start with wine. The next is to choose your country.
Jonathan, may I interrupt you for a second, please?
Please, yes.
We have a technical problem with the translation. Just a second.
Yes.
В момента се чува, да. Няма проблем. And Jonathan, everything is fixed right now. You may continue.
Okay, thank you. Should I go back any slides, or should I just continue from here? I'll continue from here then. So after you choose the product type, the next one is to choose the countries that you want to have the e-labels translated for. You can choose only the countries you want to, or you can choose all of the countries. And the reason you can choose all of the countries is that we take translations directly from the EU legislation. So we don't do translations using DeepL or Google Translate or something automated. We take the translations for the ingredients and the nutritional information directly from the regulation. So you can very easily choose all of the countries for all of your e-labels. And even if you don't speak all of the languages, the software is using the legal translations for these. So after we've chosen the product type and the countries, then the next thing is to enter the data. On bottle books, you can easily reuse information that you are already maintaining on bottle books. You can reuse other e-labels, or if it's the first time on our software, you can enter the data from scratch. I'm going to start by using data that I already have on our system. So I go in here and search for a rosé. And now this information is imported and the draft e-label is created. You have a live preview over here that shows you how it looks. And you can see here that there's some missing information. So we can go to ingredients. We have an ingredient picker. These are all of the ingredients that are, on one hand, required by the EU, as well as allowed by the EU. So all of these ingredients are what are allowed to be used in the winemaking process. And it excludes ingredients that you don't have to declare. And what I mean with that is everything that goes into the wine and stays in the wine must be declared. Any processing aid that is removed from the wine can be ignored, except for those that have allergens. So what that means in practice is that you might, grapes will be the first thing on your list generally. Then you can choose in the acidity regulators. You have preservatives here, so you can choose whichever you were using. I think it's important to show that we also support synonyms. So when you start typing in egg, for example, you can see all of the different ways that you can refer to egg being used in the product, including using the E number. I'll choose one of these just to be able to use it as an example. So now we've selected the ingredients. And over here, you can see that we automatically generate the ingredients text using the legal definitions. Acidity regulators and stabilizers do have one exception from the regulation. They have this and/or, which is something new for wine because different tanks need different treatments, and you don't want to have a different label for each filling. Other things to highlight are that we pay particular attention to things such as allergens and how they should be written. So, for example, we don't make egg lysozyme all bold, but instead only egg. Only the word should be bolded. This is also relevant for sulfites, for example, that you highlight in the name that it's sulfites or egg. Allergens have very strict regulations. So we've completed the information for the ingredients. Now we go on to the nutritional information. And here, depending on your lab reports, sometimes your lab reports will already have energy values on them. If they do not have energy values, you're able to use our calculator to calculate the energy values. So you can put in your alcohol, your sugar, and your acidity, and generate the calories. When we continue on down, then for the most of the wine information, these are the minimum amount of information you have: fat, carbohydrate, protein, and salt. When you're looking at fat, protein, and salt, these are for most wines negligible, which is legally defined slightly differently for each. So for fat, it's less than 0.5, protein the same, and for salt, it's less than 0.01. So if your lab reports say that, then you are able to just tick negligible value. And we will render it with a less than sign. Now, it is also legal to put 0 in for these values. So if it's negligible and you would like to have 0 instead of less than, then you are able to do that as well. There's also an option that we have that you can abbreviate the table and have it rendered like this. We of course need to put in our carbohydrates, which are usually just 1/10 of the value for of the residual sugar. And so this is one of the ways that you can present the information, and again, or you can tick it. All of these options that we provide to you are legal. So whichever option you choose to go for, all 3 of these options are legally permitted by the regulation. So at this point, we've completed our minimum requirements, and we can publish the e-label. You can leave yourself a note if you want to. And now the label is published. And now if you scan the QR code again, you get the label that we just created. So it's no longer the placeholder, but now it's the live e-label. And we see here, we missed something. The variety, the blend is not correct. So we can go up to basic information, change the blend, and correct it. And now we can republish it. So if you need to make changes or corrections, this is all you have to do to make those corrections. So now when you go and you view it, it's been corrected. So it's super easy for you when you use e-labels to make updates or corrections to your e-labels. I usually at this moment also point out how Bottle Books works. So each one of these, every time you publish, we are creating basically a new label. And this is very important when you are looking at compliance and wanting to know exactly what happened, when, who changed what. You can always go back in time on Bottle Books and see what did it look like the last time. So all of your data is always saved. Now, in addition to nutritional information, in more and more countries, you are also needing to provide packaging and recycling information. Italy has been the first country to require this, and Bulgaria is also, of course, introducing its own program to inform consumers about packaging and recycling. And you can do you can also do this in Bottle Books using the same QR code. So to do that, you would be able to go in and choose that, for example, it's a bottle, it's a rosé, so it's in a clear container. It's clear glass. And maybe this is probably a screw cap, so we'll choose aluminum. And then down here below the nutritional table, then you see all of the recycling information appear as well. So this allows you to fulfill both the EU regulations about nutritional information as well as country-specific regulations about recycling information. Now we'll go ahead and publish this again and make that information live. So that is how you can create an e-label to fulfill the requirements and how you can edit that. You can download the QR code to give to your printing company. And we also have a special option for printing companies as well, for them to work with you. Also, as you know, for your websites, you must provide that information anywhere your wine is being sold. So on your website, if you have an online shop where your customers can order the wine directly from you, you need to provide this information on your website, and you can copy this information directly from Bottle Books and paste it into your website. And that is how e-labeling works. Now we have a few more questions that I will cover that are getting into what you have to do. What are some of the specific regulations? So ingredients. Ingredients need to be listed in descending order of the amounts in the wine. And for wine, it's quite simple because grapes is most of it and everything else is less than 2%. So grapes needs to be first, everything else can come after. You can use either the proper ingredient name or an E number, as you saw during the demo, and our software will take care of the formatting of that text. When it comes to the nutritional table, many of your lab reports may have this information. You can use a calculator, and as I showed you in the demo, there are 3 different ways of displaying information about fat, saturates, and protein and salt, which are in the product in only a very small amount. What's important to keep in mind also is that the tolerances for the information are massive. 20% tolerance is allowed for energy, carbohydrate, sugar, for all of the nutritional value. So it means that the slight variations that you have in your wines, if you have multiple fillings, these are irrelevant. They do not matter when you're creating your labels. You can really create one label per vintage, and the slight variations are okay. So 20% tolerances will keep you safe in most circumstances. Now, what do you have to do? How does this regulation change your back label? So the first thing is that the new regulation does not allow you to remove anything from your back label. Everything that you print on the back label today must continue to be printed on the back label. So allergens, if you need to have importer details, food business operator details, that must be there. Any symbols, size, alcohol percentage, all of this must continue to be printed on the label. If you work with an e-label, you must also add energy values. So energy value, you should write it like this format and place it somewhere on your back label. Then you have a QR code, and this should be placed on the label. There should be a white boundary around it. We recommend at least 1.25 centimeters, and you should put an ingredients and nutritional values text near the QR code. This is still something that is being clarified in the EU. Previous guidance was to put an I symbol inside of the QR code, and you could leave ingredients and nutritional values away. That is no longer the guidance. Instead, it is to leave the QR code as it is, without anything in it, and to provide and to write ingredients and nutritional values in your local language next to the QR code, or in the language of the label, let's say. This is a good thing because the QR code standard does not allow icons in the QR codes. If you have a high volume quality scanning machine and you have an icon in the QR code, it is actually considered a broken QR code. Many devices are able to compensate. The QR code is a resilient code, but it is good to have this clarification and that it's following industry standards. So hopefully this helps answer questions about your back label. Now, I would highlight at this point that if you are making wines that you are only distributing inside of Bulgaria, it is also worth considering printing all the information directly on the wine. The real challenge with adding nutritional information is when you need to translate it into multiple languages. So you can print it directly on your label if you don't want to go digitally yet. However, as we've talked about the GS1 digital link, the future is QR codes. So if you don't start using QR codes today, it is something that you will start using in a few years, within the next 3 years, because the objective of GS1 is, of course, that retailers can scan QR codes by 2027. So this is something that is on its way.
Excuse me, we have again
Yes.
technical problem. A second,
Okay.
please.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So there's a few final questions that I want to address before we wrap up. The first one is, how long must the e-label be retrievable? It seems that the slide has a mistake on it. This is not correct. The e-label must be retrievable as long as the product exists. E-labels are just a digital version of a print label. And your print label, once it's on the bottle, once it's on the food, it's there until it's consumed. And that is the same expectation for e-labels. They need to be able to be on there and active for many years. Of course, whites and rosés, most of those will be consumed within the next 1 or 2 years. Reds, obviously, will stay for quite a while longer. As you saw in the demo, you can change your content in the e-label at any point in time. So if there is anything that you want to change, you can do that without reprinting your back label. On this question as well, I think it's important to highlight that with bottle books, once you've published a label, if the regulations continue to change and our software is updated with that, you do not need to go back and review your old labels. Your old labels, we have built our software so that your old labels will never change. So even if our software moves forward, the label that you review and you publish today will never change. So that you, in a few years' time, you don't have to review 100 older labels or more just because there's new regulations. We want to keep you make it so that it's not a lot of work and you have absolute certainty. We don't like to think about you leaving bottle books if you decide for us, but we also believed from day one that we wanted to provide our customers a very clear way of how to move away from us, because otherwise, because the QR codes need to work for years, we wanted to still know that you had some flexibility in this. And so there are 2 options for you to move away from bottle books. One is that if you want to leave all of your existing labels on bottle books for your older vintages, you just need to have the minimum subscription. If you have a bigger subscription and you just want to keep your labels active, you just go to the smallest subscription and you can stay there. If you want to terminate your subscription entirely, you are able to export all of the information from your e-labels so that you can upload that to another vendor and you can redirect all your QR codes for free. So there's a low cost and there's a zero cost option. The zero cost option, of course, has slightly more work on your side, but we've thought about all the different scenarios. But we will do, of course, everything we can to keep you as a customer. It's also worth noting that Europe is not on its own. What about countries outside? So, for example, in the US, the European information and way of showing the information is illegal. Even though the US does not require nutritional information, if you display it, it must conform with US standards. The most obvious is that in Europe and most of the rest of the world, we use milliliters in the metric system. And so the units are 100 mils. In the US, all of the measurements are in 5 ounces. But we are paying attention to regulations around the world, and our vision is that you will be able to use our software to comply with all regulations around the world with a single software and not have to use multiple tools. As we mentioned earlier, you need to have this information in your online shop before people buy. You do not need the information in marketing. It's only where somebody is able to buy your wines. We do have options for other types of businesses. So if you're a larger winery, we have data import tools so that you can import large amounts of data into bottle books with very little effort. And we have an agency and printing house version because they have unique challenges themselves. A lot of wineries need to change their labels this year, and there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done by the agency and printing houses. And we also have software to help them streamline their processes. Oops. As a final pitch for bottle books, we are the largest data software business for wine in the world. We are working with wine associations and businesses around the world. Our focus is to be experts in this regulation, consolidating everything into a single form for you. And when you use bottle books, you're not just putting your data into yet another system only for e-labels. You can do a lot more with bottle books, creating info sheets and sharing this data with others directly through the software. We are part of the industry and have been there for a long time. Last but not least, pricing is always a good thing to talk about. With bottle books, you only pay for what you need. Our pricing is very simple. It's based on how many e-labels you need to create this year. How many wines do you make per year? So if you're a smaller winery and make a smaller number of wines, it starts at e-label 20 for 250 is our base price, 35, 50, 100. You have no costs for your older wines. You just need an active subscription. So it's very easy for you to understand what your cost is. And as Mr. Simeonov indicated, and we'll distribute the code afterwards, you have a 35% discount from these prices until December the 8th as an early bird discount. So when we distribute this presentation after the call, we will include the discount code for you directly in there. So I hope that you have found this webinar to be informative and to help you plan your next steps. Again, if your wine is produced before December the 8th, then you have a bit of time. You don't have to change everything tomorrow. However, we also recommend you don't wait too long because there is a lot of people that have to change their labels in the next 6 months. And the label printing companies have already been telling us they don't believe they will be able to deliver everybody's labels on time. So the sooner you start planning, the sooner that you take the next steps, the better prepared you're going to be. And again, there'll be an announcement shortly with the information that the software is now in Bulgarian. And again, feel free to contact us with any of your questions. If you have any questions about labeling, any questions about regulations, feel free to contact us. if we don't know the answer, we know the people who can find it out for you. So, Mr. Simeonov, Ms. Bratanova, thank you again for this opportunity to present on this very important topic, and for the opportunity to support you and your members in complying with this new regulation. Thank you.
Thank you also for your presentation. Това, което мога да кажа е, че да, всъщност регламента при вината е от 2021 година, но той реферира към един по-предишен регламент при храните 1169, като за мен за вината има уникална възможност тази информация да се предостави в електронен вид, а не това, което се получи при хранителните продукти. Наблъскаха етикетите с информация, която трудно се разчита. Така че тази възможност за използване на електронен етикет е много голямо предимство. От това, което представи господин Харклерот, който е създател и изпълнителен директор на платформата, всъщност много ясно се вижда съответствието с регулаторните изисквания, както в изпълнението на самото решение, така и в перспектива да продължи да отговаря на тези, да следи тези изисквания, да ги изпълнява. Друго така съществено като момент е удобството за работа и това, което и той каза, че работим върху превода на интерфейса, за да може да бъде по-лесно за работа при въвеждане на информация. Изключително предимство е QR-кода с неговите динамични параметри, доколкото може да създадете по името на продукта QR-код и вече спокойно допълнително да се въвежда информация. Също така и изчисляването на енергийните стойности е едно така не за подценяване предимство. Като вече в чата видях, че има някои въпроси, на които мисля, че в някаква степен отговорих. Относно алкохолните продукти няма регулаторно изискване, но там има саморегулиране с меморандум, който е подписан. И на практика тези продукти, мисля, че още от 2019 година са започнали поетапно въвеждане на електронния код. Но сега давам думата за въпроси за работа с платформата Bottlebooks или други въпроси, които имате, свързани с регламента и изискванията и възможностите за неговото изпълнение. Кода за отстъпка може да получите, като се свържете с нас. Ще ви го предоставим.
Аз мога ли да задам въпрос?
Да, разбира се, заповядайте.
На български или на английски има ли значение?
Има превод, така че може и на български да го зададе.
Добре, въпросът ми е следния. Трябва да създадем един електронен етикет за всяка реколта и QR-код за всеки обем. Тоест, аз не разбрах как трябва да клонираме QR-кода на едно вино за различните му обеми.
Всъщност...
Или не съм разбрала аз правилно?
Всъщност, обеми, различните разфасовки, на практика това са различни продукти, по начина по който и в електронния етикет излиза количеството, литровете или милилитрите, на практика това се разглежда като различни продукти. Също така, факт е, че от реколта до реколта параметрите са различни, така че на практика дори един и същи продукт в различните реколти тези стойности могат да варират. Jonathan, do you heard the question? Do you want to add something?
Absolutely. That is a great question. And that is what makes this topic so complex. You have at one end of the industry commercial wines, which are largely uniform even between vintages. And at the other end, you have wines that are very unique to each vintage and single estate wines, and even individual wine. As an individual winery, you may make this entire range of wines. So to answer your question, we have created the software to support all of these different scenarios. Specifically to your question, if you, in some countries, such as the UK, it's commonly expected that you put a alternate portion size on the label. So the legal requirement is 100 milliliters. In the UK, you commonly need to put 125 or 150. And then you must include on the label how many servings are per container. So if you do not need to indicate servings per container, you can just leave the volume off of the e-label and use the e-label for all of your formats. If you need to have the servings per container on your e-label for specific markets, then you can you would have correctly, you would have one e-label for each size, for each format. Then we have, so that's how many e-labels. So it depends on whether you need to have servings per container on there. Then when we look at the QR codes in the context of GS1 Digital Link, this is, it's hard to over speak or overemphasize how important this is for the wine industry. This is perhaps what the wine industry has been waiting for years. And the digital link, and GS1 has delivered this with a digital link. And what I mean is that every vintage is different for a wine. It's not just the analytical values, it's the flavors, it's the terroir, everything changes. Every year is a new product. However, how many of your retailers tell you that they want to have the G10 stay the same every single year? And so it means that the barcode for wine information doesn't work. You cannot take a barcode and get information specific to that vintage. With GS1 Digital Link, you have the best of both worlds. You're able to keep the G10 the same, but you're also able to have a unique identifier in there. It could be your lot ID, it could be the vintage, and then it allows customers to get information specifically to that vintage. And so that's why the GS1 Digital Link is, it was created for the wine industry, you could say. So I hope I answered that question. If not, let me know, and I'll try to do better.
Thank you. I believe the answer is quite enough.
Okay.
If I may ask another question, it's specific for our winery. We already do have a Bottle Books account. So could we take advantage of this discount code or no?
Absolutely, everybody can. There's no restrictions.
Okay.
The only restriction is signing up before December the 8th. That's the only restriction.
We made an account 2 weeks ago, so it is active now. Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Jonathan, I will read a question from the chat.
Yes.
Въпрос госпожа Портева по отношение дали трябва да бъдат направени в определена лаборатория данните, които да се съдържат на етикета. This data from that should be contained in the label, should they have a laboratory analysis?
So they do not need to be done in a specific laboratory. The expectation is that you should not have to change, most wineries will not have to change their wine analyses. That the information you need for the nutritional table in most circumstances is already provided by your laboratory. As I mentioned, some laboratories do not have energy values, and that's why you have the calculator. So that is the general operating assumption by the industry, is that wineries do not have to change their lab analyses in order to comply.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, one thing that we would love to have discussions with in Bulgaria. So if somebody has a contact to the organizations or to the laboratories, is we would love to discuss putting QR codes on the lab reports themselves. We are working on this, for example, in Austria, so that starting next year, the Austrian labs or certification agencies will include a QR code on the report that they will be able to scan and import the data into bottle books, so you don't have to retype it. So that is something that we would love to discuss with laboratories in Bulgaria as well, so that it's one less form that you have to fill out.
По отношение на таксата виждам, че има въпрос. Както стана дума от модела, който беше показан, всъщност това отговарям на госпожа Портева. Тя се заплаща на годишна база, на база прогнозата за брой етикети, които ще ползвате, като се гледат само ново регистрираните етикети, не гледате тези, които вече са създадени в системата. Като цената, като самата схема на таксата е динамична, той това ви каза, че може да има преход между отделните пакети, които се предлагат. Ако сте стартирали с 100, в някакъв момент може да минете на 200. И всъщност според това какво сте ползвали дадена година и следващата какво ще ползвате, се преизчисляват нещата, като отстъпката е постоянна. Не знам дали успях да отговоря конкретно на въпроса. Във всички случаи, не знам, други въпроси, които не са в чата, примерно. Има ли, ако някой иска да зададе, при всички въпроси, тъй като е доста динамична кореспонденцията в чата, е много възможно да сме пропуснали някой въпрос, на който да отговорим, но ние ще ги прегледаме и ще изпратим отговорите. Както и сме далеч от убеждението, че тази среща сме изчерпали всички въпроси и сме дали отговор на всичко, което ви интересува. Оставаме на разположение и занапред при допълнителни въпроси, нужда от уточнения. Така че това също може да го имате в предвид, дори да не сте успяли да зададете конкретен въпрос, в по-късен етап се сетите за нещо, ние сме на разположение. Екипът ни е обучен, ще ви съдействаме за работа с платформата. Някой искаше да попита нещо, може би прекъснах. Няма други въпроси. Голямо предимство е също така, че по начина, по който видяхте, че беше представено конкретно решение, Това е интересно. Дали за Швейцария и Англия тези изисквания са валидни?
Здравейте, от Винаги славянци, Димо Димитров.
Да.
Сега стана ясно, че всички вина, които са произведени след 8 декември, трябва да бъдат с QR код и с енергийни стойности.
Да.
Ние знаем, че имаме доста вина, които са и по-стари реколти, които не са етикетирани.
Да.
Те първо ще бъдат етикетирани. Това означава ли, че и те трябва да бъдат с labels?
Когато ги етикетирате с годината, която са произведени, ли ще са или с нова година? Това обърна внимание, че ако имате примерно продукти, които са произведени 2022 година и ги предлагате на пазара след 8 декември, не е необходимо да правите промени по етикетите. Това касае единствено и само произведените след 8 декември, като пак той обърна внимание, че по отношение на понятието производство, какво се има предвид под производство, има се предвид, че те са достигнали съответния алкохолен градус. Който е за съответното вино.
Че тогава са бутилирани или...
Не, достигнали са съответния алкохолен градус за готовност на даденото вино. Значи в някаква степен може би не сме толкова тънко запознати с самия процес на производство, но като термин това изрично сме го питали, защото много въпроси бяха зададени какво се има предвид под произведен, бутилиран или какво. Виното зрее или ферментира до достигането на определен алкохолен градус. Ако правилно се изразявам. Става дума, че за тези, които достигат до това ниво след 8 декември, за тях влиза сила. За тези, които вече са го постигнали, за тях не се изисква. За по-стари реколти 2020, 2021, 2022, които тепърва ще предлагате на пазара, не е необходимо да се изпълняват изискванията за тези електронни етикети. То не е изискването за електронен етикет. Електронният етикет е възможност. Идеята е за предоставяне на информация за състава и за хранителната стойност.
Благодаря.
And Jonathan, what about UK and Switzerland? Are the requirements valid also for these countries?
For Switzerland and the UK?
Yes, do you know that?
So the UK, it's not required. However, the most importers are asking for it because I shouldn't say it that way. It's not required for England and Scotland, but it is required for Northern Ireland. And many of the importers in the UK, they also export to the Republic of Ireland. So even though it's not required for the UK, many of the businesses in the UK are using the European standard because they distribute, they want to be able to distribute your wines to Ireland or to other countries without having to get a new label.
Thank you. Госпожа Портева, мисля, че отговорихме. Всъщност веригата на доставки при вината дистрибутиране е много сложна, така че в общи линии е трудно. Дори да няма такова изискване, все пак с оглед на дистрибуцията може би е добре да се сложат такива етикети. Тъй като доста напредна времето за днешната среща и едва ли ще изчерпаме всички въпроси, все пак искам да благодаря на участниците, благодаря на Йонатан Харклерот за интересната презентация и за тази интересна възможност, която можем да предоставим на българските производители с оглед по-лесно и бързо изпълнение на новите регулаторни изисквания. И последно ще прегледаме отново въпросите в чата, ще отговорим на тези, които не сме отговорили, и оставам на разположение за бъдещи въпроси и обсъждане на възможностите. Благодаря ви.